Hungarian Royal History. By 2021, there will be 8 World Heritage Sites in Hungary, 7 of which are cultural sites and 1, Agtelic Karst Cave and Slovak Karst, is a natural site. The first 2 sites in Hungary were added to the list at the 11th session of the World Heritage Committee, held in Paris, France in 1987. One of these 2 sites is the village of Holoko, the other being Budapest, on the Danube River with the district Buda. The site was last expanded in 2002. The most recent site added to the list is the historical cultural landscape of the Tokaj region, recorded in 2002. In 2003, all 8 sites were renamed to the current names listed below. 2 sites are transnational. The Furto-Nusilda cultural landscape is shared with Austria, and the Slovak Agtelic Karst and Karst caves are shared with Slovakia. In addition, there are 10 sites in Hungary's tentative list. The city of Budapest was officially created on November 17, 1873 from the merger of the 3 neighboring cities of Pest, Buda and Buda. Small towns on the outskirts of the city merged into Greater Budapest in 1950. Budapest's origins date back to the Celtic occupation of the Hungarian plains in the 4th century BC. The area was later conquered by the Roman Empire, who built the fortress and city of Aquincum on the site of present-day Budapest around 100 CE. The Romans were driven out in the 5th century by the Huns, who were challenged by various tribes over the next few centuries. The Hungarian conquest of the Carpathian Basin began in the late 9th century, and the Kingdom of Hungary was founded in the late 11th century. A brief history of the Romans. The first city, built by the Celts in the 1st century BC, is about 30 hectares along the slopes of Gellert Hill. Archaeological finds suggest that it may have been jewelry from a separate artisan district. It may also have been a trading center, as indicated by coins originating from various regions. The city was by the Romans at the beginning of the Christian era. Its inhabitants moved to the plains of the Danube to the city, which retained its Celtic name, Aquincum, in the 1st century AD. In 106 CE, it became the capital of the Roman province of Pannonia Inferior. The headquarters of the governor and a significant military force are stationed here, and the population is about 20,000 people. It was frequently involved in wars on the borders of the Roman Empire, formed by the Danube River. 2. Middle Ages. The Romans withdrew from the Hungarian plains in the 5th century AD to be replaced by the Huns after fierce wars. After the fragmentation of the Huns that resulted from the death of Attila the Hun, Germanic tribes, such as the Lombards, and the Avars occupied the area during the Second Age of Migration. The Avar Khaganate dominated Pannonia between the 6th and 9th centuries. From 829, Pannonia became part of Bulgaria after the fall of the Avar Khaganate and the defeat of the forces of the Holy Roman Empire under Louis the Pious at the hands of Bulgarian troops under Omertag. The Bulgarians built 2 border forts, Buda and Pest, on opposite sides of the Danube River. While other tribes were scattered throughout the Carpathian Valley, the Arpad clan settled on Csepel Island, a large island in the Danube, and formed a refuge for the settlers who began agricultural work in the southern part of Budapest today. It was under the Arpad dynasty that Hungary became a Christian nation, ruled first from Esztergom and then from Székesfehérvár. After the Bulgarian-Hungarian Wars, Buda and Pest began to develop economically in the 12th century, in large part because of the French, Walloon and German settlers who migrated there and worked and traded under royal protection along the banks of the Danube River. Both cities were destroyed during the Mongol invasion of Europe in 1241–42 and later rebuilt by German invaders, who renamed themselves Buda, often, furnace, after many limestone kilns. The name for Hamar, which is of Slavic origin, also means furnace. It was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. During the 14th century, the Angevin kings of Hungary, who were originally from France, established Buda as a centralized center of power. They built a succession of palaces on Várhegyi Castle Hill, and reached the height of their power and prestige during the Renaissance under the good king, Matthias Corvinus Hunyadi Morjas, who reigned from 1458 to 1490. Together with his Italian-born wife, Queen Beatrice from Naples, he presided over a golden age of prosperity and patronage of the arts. Hungary's disastrous defeat at the Battle of Mohawks in 1526 against the Turks led by Suleiman the Magnificent paved the way for the Ottoman occupation of Hungary. The siege of Buda by Suleiman 1541 was part of the minor war in Hungary between the Habsburgs and the Ottoman Empire. 3 years after the Battle of Vienna in 1683, a pan-European multinational army besieged Buda Castle in the Battle of Buda 1686 for 6 weeks, finally recapturing it on the 12th attempt with heavy losses on both sides. Four. Application of the law. In the early stages, the lands ruled by the Habsburg kings of Hungary were considered the Kingdom of Hungary, and the Kingdom of Hungary. The Kingdom of Hungary was a symbol of the continuity of formal law after the Ottoman occupation, as it was able to preserve its legal traditions. But in general, it is the de facto province of Habsburg. The Hungarian nobility forced Vienna to recognize that Hungary was a special unit of the Habsburg lands and had to be ruled according to its own special laws. However, Hungarian historiography places Transylvania in direct continuity with the medieval Kingdom of Hungary in pursuit of advancing Hungarian interests. Under the terms of the Treaty of Karlowitz, which ended the Great Turkish War in 1699, the Ottomans ceded almost all of Ottoman Hungary. The new territory was united with the territory of the Kingdom of Hungary, and although its rule was largely formal, a Diet in Pressburg ruled the territory. The two major Hungarian uprisings were the Rákóczi War of Independence in the early 18th century and the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, and marked important changes in the evolution of government. The kingdom became a dual monarchy in 1867, known as Austria-Hungary. 5. Reform. The Reformation spread rapidly, and by the early 17th century almost no noble family remained Catholic. In the Kingdom of Hungary, the majority of the population became Lutherans in the late 16th century. Archbishop Peter Pázmány reorganized the Roman Catholic Church of the Kingdom of Hungary and led the Counter-Reformation which reversed Protestant gains in the Kingdom of Hungary, using persuasion rather than intimidation. The Reformation caused a rift between Catholics, who often sided with the Habsburgs, and Protestants, who developed a strong national identity and became rebellious in Austrian eyes. A chasm also developed between the prominent, mostly Catholic, and the minor nobility who were mostly Protestant. As Habsburg control over Turkish holdings began to increase, Leopold I's ministers argued that he should rule Hungary as a conquered territory. At the Hungarian Royal Diet in Pressburg, in 1687, the emperor promised to obey all laws and privileges. Nonetheless, the hereditary succession of the Habsburgs was recognized, and the rights of resistance of the nobles were annulled. In 1690 Leopold began to redistribute land liberated from the Turks. The Protestant aristocrats and all other Hungarians deemed unfaithful by the Habsburgs lost their lands, which were given to foreigners. Vienna controls foreign affairs, defense, tariffs, and other functions. Six. Modern history. After the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, the emperor repealed Hungary's constitution and assumed absolute control. Franz Joseph divided the country into 4 distinct regions: Hungary, Transylvania, Croatia, Slavonia, and Vojvodina. German and Bohemian administrators ran the government, and German became the language of administration and higher education. The non-Magyar minority in Hungary received little of their support for Austria during the turmoil. A Croatian reportedly told a Hungarian, "We accept as a reward what the Magyars get as punishment." Hungary's public opinion is divided over the country's relations with Austria. Some Hungarians gave hope of a complete separation from Austria. Others wanted accommodation with the Habsburgs, provided they respected the Hungarian constitution and laws. Ferenc Deák became the main supporter of the accommodation. Deák upholds the legality of the April Law and argues that its amendments require approval of the Hungarian Diet. He also argued that the removal of the Habsburgs was illegitimate. As long as Austria ruled unanimously, Deák argued, Hungarians should do nothing more than passively reject illegal demands. The first crack in Franz Joseph's neo-absolutism government developed in 1859, when the armies of Sardinian Piedmont and French defeated Austria at the Battle of Solferino. The defeat convinced Franz Joseph that the national and social opposition to his government was too strong to be regulated by decree from Vienna. Gradually he realized the need for concessions to Hungary, and Austria and Hungary thus moved toward a compromise. In 1866 Prussia defeated Austria, further underlining the weakness of the Habsburg Empire. Negotiations between the emperor and the Hungarian leaders intensified and eventually resulted in the Compromise of 1867, which created the Austro-Hungarian dual kingdom, also known as the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's 6 brief history of Hungary, reported from Wikipedia.com. Hope it is useful. Thank you.